Hello, you who are listening to this story. There are things in life that we cannot see with our eyes, nor touch with our hands, yet they exist very clearly in the soul of each person. The human soul, whether strong or fragile, always holds unexplored corners. On this journey today, I invite you to stop for a moment and join me in discovering 5 things in the soul. Things that are invisible and terrifying, yet they are the very things we must face to grow. Because only when we look directly at these things can we step out of the darkness and find the true light. The ultimate loneliness. When you have no one to lean on, loneliness, a word that may seem simple at first glance, yet it contains countless complexities and pain. No one wants to face loneliness. We often try to avoid it, seeking comfort from those around us or staying busy with work and relationships to fill the emptiness. But loneliness is not just the absence of someone beside us. It is a psychological state, a feeling of being completely disconnected from the world around us, when you feel abandoned, like a lonely island in the vast ocean, with no one near, no one who understands. When facing loneliness, you feel like a faint shadow among a crowded world. Even though there are people all around, with eyes, words, and voices, you still cannot find anyone who truly understands you. That feeling is indescribable, a moment when you realize that the presence of others is not just a supplement, but an essential part that helps you feel that you exist. Without anyone to share with, without anyone to confide in, you start to feel like an invisible object, meaningless, valueless. In those moments of utter loneliness, you begin to sense the deep void in your soul. That is when you realize that not needing anyone is truly the scariest thing. We often comfort ourselves by saying that we can live alone, that being resilient and strong is enough. But when you truly face loneliness, you will see that having no one by your side is the greatest challenge the human soul has to face. Loneliness is not just a physical deprivation, it is a spiritual one, a lack of the connections we need to feel that we belong to a larger world. When there is no one to share with, negative thoughts begin to flood in. The deep fears in your soul begin to rise. You will ask yourself, am I really important? Does anyone need me? And then, those questions repeat in your head, pushing you into a spiral of anxiety and insecurity. Your soul becomes heavy, and nameless pain seems to coil in your heart, unable to be released. You realize that it's not just the lack of affection, but a deeper fear, the fear that you no longer exist in the eyes of others, the fear that one day you will disappear and no one will even know. And this fear is not just a fleeting feeling. It digs deep into every cell, every corner of the soul. When there is no one to rely on, no one to share with, you begin to doubt yourself. You ask, do I really deserve to be loved? And that is the vulnerability of humans when faced with loneliness. Loneliness not only makes you feel empty, but it also makes you feel useless, without value, like a shadow in the world. We often blame the circumstances, the world around us, the people who are not there when we are struggling. But in reality, when we feel lonely, we are facing ourselves. The deep fear that no one truly sees our value. That feeling is more painful than any physical hurt because it touches something very deep in the soul. The need to be loved, accepted, and understood. But sometimes it is in the loneliest moments that we find valuable lessons. Loneliness is not always a bad thing. It can be an opportunity to face ourselves, to better understand what we truly need in life. Loneliness can be a pause where we listen to our inner voice, reassess ourselves, and find things we had never noticed before. We cannot avoid moments of loneliness in life, but what matters is how we face them positively. When you learn to love and accept yourself, loneliness will no longer be a fear. Instead, it will become part of the journey of self-discovery, and from there, you will become a stronger, more confident person than ever before. So, 2. The fear of losing the meaning of life. There are times in life when we feel like we're walking endlessly without seeing a destination. Our steps suddenly become heavy, weary, and goals that once seemed clear now feel faint. We ask ourselves, what am I doing? Why do I have to try so hard? And then, a bigger question starts to echo in our mind. Does life really have meaning? The fear of losing the meaning of life is not something rare. Every person faces this feeling at some point. The feeling of being lost, not knowing why we're living, and whether all our efforts and struggles are truly worth it. When the meaning of life becomes unclear, everything around us turns invisible, blurred, like a colorless painting, a murky world where we cannot find beauty or purpose. This feeling not only makes us lose motivation, but also pulls us into a deep abyss. That is when all the dreams, the ideals that once burned in our hearts begin to fade, becoming faint lights that slowly dissolve into darkness. Everything we once pursued no longer seems important. Joys that used to matter now feel meaningless, and hopes for the future are nothing but invisible promises. Love, work, relationships. Everything suddenly seems distant, and in that moment we feel like we're drifting in an endless ocean, aimless, without purpose. This fear can destroy everything in our soul, making us question whether we truly matter in this life. When we no longer know why we're living, we feel like a tiny grain of sand in a vast desert, an insignificant part of this infinite universe. Each day passes like the last, with nothing new, nothing worth looking forward to. We begin to feel like a shadow, passing through life without leaving a mark, without making any change. This sense of directionlessness is one of the scariest things in the soul, because it not only makes us lose faith in life, but also pulls us into a spiral of despair. It feels like falling into a bottomless pit where there is no escape, no path leading to a bright future. But sometimes, in the most seemingly hopeless moments, that's when we find the faintest light to keep going. Because in reality, nothing in life is meaningless. Even the smallest steps, even the decisions that seem insignificant, are all essential parts of the journey to rediscover the meaning of life. Every challenge, every hardship, every joy or sorrow contributes to shaping the person we are today. Difficulties are not meaningless. They are valuable lessons, turning points for us to reflect on ourselves, to find our reason for living, even if it takes time. And sometimes, in those moments when we feel the most stuck, we find the reason to keep going. A small light from a meeting, a moment of understanding, a shared experience, or simply the peace within our own soul. These are signs that, no matter how hard life gets, we can still find meaning somewhere, in the small things, in the simple moments. So if you're feeling exhausted, if you're feeling lost, remember that life is never meaningless. Every step, no matter how small or large, has value. Keep walking, because even if you don't see the results right away, each step brings you closer to understanding and the meaning of life. And in that moment, you'll realize that no path is meaningless, only the steps that never stop moving forward. The fear of not being able to forgive ourselves. In life, no one is perfect. We all have moments of mistakes, decisions we regret, actions that may hurt others and ourselves. Sometimes, hasty words, thoughtless gestures, or wrong choices force us to face feelings of guilt. But the worst thing is not those mistakes themselves, but the fear that we will never be forgiven, not by others, but by ourselves. This feeling is an invisible burden, a heavy stone on our heart. When we cannot forgive ourselves, we carry an ongoing pain, like a wound that will never heal, no matter how many apologies, no matter how many efforts to make things right. The guilt clings to us, never letting go, and we cannot find relief. No matter what the world says, no matter how those who love us forgive us, we become our own biggest enemy. We remain trapped in shame and self-blame, unable to escape that vicious cycle. This fear not only causes us suffering in the present, but also prevents us from moving forward into the future. We feel unworthy of forgiveness, unworthy of a peaceful life, a bright future. And so, we keep living in the past, like a ghost, carrying wounds that can never heal, scars that no one can see but that always haunt our soul. However, in reality, it is only when we learn to forgive ourselves, to accept that we are human with all our weaknesses and mistakes, that we can find true peace. Forgiveness is not about forgetting the wrongs, but about accepting that we were wrong, while also understanding that mistakes are not the end, but a valuable lesson. Forgiving ourselves is not about allowing ourselves to continue making mistakes, but about freeing ourselves from the weight of guilt so we can move on, continue growing. Life is a long journey, and we will always face challenges. But if we cannot forgive ourselves, we cannot move forward. We will always be stuck in the past, in self-inflicted pain. Only when we learn to forgive can we truly love ourselves and keep walking down the path of life, even when we stumble along the way. 4. The fear of losing our true identity. In a world that constantly changes, where expectations from society, family, and friends always weigh heavily on our shoulders, we sometimes find ourselves asking, am I still myself? Who am I living for? What am I living for? This is the fear of losing our identity, when we no longer know who we are, when we do everything just to meet the expectations of others, when we no longer recognize ourselves in our actions, words, and choices. We feel like a shadow, a faint reflection of who we truly are. This fear may stem from living too long in the expectations of others, and if we're not awake to it, it can cause us to lose sight of our purpose in life. Remember, you are the only one who can decide who you are. Don't let the world around you decide your path. No matter where you go or what you do, make sure it is your choice, a true choice, not an image that others have created for you. 5. The death of love. Love is something that each of us longs for. It's the wonderful emotion that everyone hopes to experience in their lifetime. It can be the love between two people, the bond that connects a family, or even the love for oneself. Love gives meaning to life, making it sweet and worth living. But when love dies, everything that once was bright suddenly becomes dull, empty. When love is no longer there, the world seems to become a cold place. The relationships between people who once loved each other are now nothing more than empty conversations, eyes no longer warm, and moments together fade into distant memories, as if we are trying to hold on to things that have already disappeared. Love is not just words or actions, it's a part of the soul, a flame that lights up life. When that flame goes out, darkness takes over. All that remains is loneliness, silence, and a sorrow that words cannot express. Perhaps the death of love is one of the greatest pains that a person can experience. It is not just the loss of someone, but the loss of a part of oneself. When love dies, we don't just lose someone, we lose our belief in what is good, in what can make life worth living. But even though love may die, it doesn't mean it can't come back. Love can return if you dare to love again, if you dare to open your heart and allow yourself to be loved. Sometimes we have to go through pain and suffering to truly understand the value of real love. And when you dare to love again, you will realize that love is not something easily attained, but it is worth searching for, worth hoping for. Love is a journey, and even though sometimes we will face challenges and pain, love itself will be the strength to revive what has been lost, to brighten the dark corners of the soul. So don't give up on love. Don't let the death of a relationship make you give up on everything. Remember, love can always come back, as long as you dare to open your heart and allow yourself to love again. Conclusion. In the end, the things within our souls that we lack and fear the most are the very things each of us must face. Loneliness, the loss of meaning in life, the inability to forgive, the loss of identity, and the death of love. All of these are challenges we must overcome in life. But don't forget, each challenge is an opportunity for us to grow. We cannot avoid these fears, but we can learn how to face and overcome them. So, live with courage, with awareness, and with love. And always remember, it is in those dark moments that the true light will shine through.